Could everyone please take their seats? We're about to begin. Everyone please take their seats. Thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Legal Defense Fund's annual Selma Voting Rights Program. It is so wonderful to see so many of our partners and coalition members who we work with throughout the year here with us today. Our President and Director Counsel is going to come and give formal greetings, but I just have a few quick announcements before I turn it over to her. First, please feel free to take pictures and videos of today's program and share on social media. You can tag us at NAACP_LDF. That's NAACP_LDF. The restrooms are around this corner, down the hall to the left. There is staff in the hall to help guide you. Today's program will be live streamed on Facebook and YouTube, and the recording will be posted on our pages for later viewing. With that, I will turn it over to the President and Director Counsel of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, our leader, Janae Nelson.
Thank you, Jared. Good afternoon, everybody. It is so wonderful to see you here, and my heart is filled every time I come to Selma and drive across that bridge and see people lining up, and I think about when we first started coming to Selma years and years ago, and what a quiet but powerful celebration it was, and what it has become today. It is truly miraculous. What's also miraculous is someone took my notes from the podium. So I don't know where they are. No, these all say reserved. These all say reserved. So we're just gonna go with it. We're just gonna go with it. You don't have them, somebody has them. But what I will say is, we welcome you all here today. This is something that our staff looks forward to every year, putting together forums like this, where we bring together some of the best and brightest thinkers about racial justice, about democracy, about voting rights. And we get our colleagues who do this work year-round to come together for rejuvenation, for a recommitment to the work that we do. And in this moment, where our democracy is being threatened in a way that I know I have never seen in my lifetime, these moments are precious. They are so precious for us to feed off of one another, to strategize, to talk about our wins, to talk about the threats, and to, thank you, and to face, to face another day together, knowing that we are strong and that every year this builds. And I'm looking right now at a former client of mine, Ernest Montgomery, who I represented eons ago in voting rights cases. And just his presence here today, thank you. It just reminds me of what it takes to create change. It takes all of us. It takes lawyers. It takes brave clients. It takes organizers. It takes researchers, demographers, people who are willing to spend their lives and their livelihoods advancing our democracy. And one of those people who helps, I don't need them anymore, one of those people who helps to do this all the time is Representative Terry Sewell. And yes, please. And I know she's joined today as well by her colleague Joe Morelli. Welcome and thank you for being here. But Representative Sewell is going to provide some opening remarks, but I just want to say a brief word about her and the type of leader and person she is. As you know, we litigated a case that helped to produce a second Black majority district in the state of Alabama. And that district, when we were creating that map and we were trying to figure out how to do that district without doing damage to the district that Representative Sewell has, and to make sure that we were being balanced and fair and complying with the Voting Rights Act and every other legal requirement, we did not hear, as we often do in some of these instances, from Representative Sewell to say, well, whatever you do, protect me, whatever you do, worry about me. She said, whatever you do, draw the right map for Black voters in Alabama. That's leadership. That's integrity. And that's the woman you're about to hear from. So please join me in welcoming Representative Terry Sewell. Thank you.
Janae can introduce me anytime. Did you know I was on a ballot on Tuesday? I just need my constituents to be here. Welcome to my hometown of Selma, Alabama. I always look forward to this particular panel. It used to be in my church, the historic Brown Chapel AME Church, which is currently under renovation, but that was a church where the marchers gathered and left from and came back. And so growing up in this town, you know, the bridge was a portal for me to get home to see my mama and daddy. But at the same time, having been steeped in the history of what happened here in Selma, as a daughter of Selma and a lifelong member of Brown Chapel AME Church, I have to tell you, every year, those foot soldiers would come back. And I remember being a little tot in Sunday school, seeing them. I remember singing in the youth choir and seeing them. And so basically growing up, and I would have never thought in a million years that I would get to know John Lewis. I mean, he was just such a luminary. And to have the opportunity not just to meet him, but to serve with him, to be able to call him colleague, it was awe-inspiring. And he was so giving. He's giving of everybody, but he was so giving. And he would see me and he'd say, "The girl from Selma," and I say, "The boy from Troy." I miss him so much, you all. I think all of us do. And when I first got elected, he called me, and I have to say, it just took my breath away. I know that the journey that we are all on when it comes to voting rights is something that's very personal to me, and I'm sure it's personal to a lot of you. But you cannot grow up in Selma, Alabama without really understanding the import. And old battles have become new again. We now see, I mean, who would have ever thought that 59 years after John was bludgeoned on a bridge, that the cause for which he was marching for is now our cause, again. It just goes to show you that progress is elusive, and every generation has to fight to hold on to the progress that we've made and to try to advance it. And so with that, I just want to say no one does that better than LDF, and I see so many of my amazing partners in this effort, and I want to say thank you, because change rarely comes from the halls of Congress. It bubbles up from grassroots activism. And these are the folks who are leading that effort in those groups, and they deserve a round of applause. So the Shelby case took us back, an Alabama case. And I think all of you know that I have filed it's now been renamed the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act for 5 Congresses now since the 2013 decision. And I look forward to filing it again and again and again and again and again. We cannot give up. They didn't give up. I mean, every time I get tired, I think about John, and I think about those marchers. I mean, they bludgeoned on a bridge, and then 2 days later, turnaround Tuesday, they're out there marching again, and then they get the injunction a week and a half later, and they're out there again. We should all take this opportunity this weekend to breathe in the space and the place where this happened, and to feel renewed, to reinvigorate ourselves for the fight ahead, because there is a fight ahead. I mean, it used to be that voting rights was nonpartisan. You had both bipartisan, nonpartisan, whatever you want to say. Everybody was talking about voting. And they reauthorized the Voting Rights Act. I don't have to tell this group. They reauthorized it 5 times. And but for the decision in the Shelby case, we would still be living under one of those reauthorizations. So we have a lot of work to do, because we see that every state, and my state has been the worst, are making it harder for folks to be able to vote. Just last week, they introduced a bill in Alabama that would criminalize helping someone fill out an absentee ballot. Now, if that's not directly aimed at the disabled and the seniors, and I mean, what are they so afraid of? Losing. Because when we vote, we win. And frankly, when black folks vote, we make a difference. Look at Atlanta. So we have got to remember our mission is never over. All of us have a role to play in that. I'm honored to be a member of Congress, but I'm more honored to represent my hometown in Congress. And I have to say, Janae, LDF, you guys rock. They took on this case, it was a Milligan case, and they consulted me on the front end. And they consulted me in the middle. And they consulted me at the end. I was a part of that case for the, 4 years that you guys were litigating it? And I say thank you, because this could only happen if you trust the lawyers that are doing it and you trust the process. And I knew you weren't going to let me down. Nope. I knew that you weren't going to let the Alabama black voters down. And what I have to say is that we have to turn out, because if we don't turn out, we will not win that second seat. DeWanna, we got work to do. We do. We have to turn folks out, because that seat is a 48.7% seat. Okay, it is not a majority minority. It's quite close to it, but it's not a majority minority seat. And so we can't take anything for granted. And I know that this panel will not only encourage and inspire all of you, but I really hope that we all take on this mantle of making sure that our voting rights are secure. And the only way we can do that is to continue the fight. So thank you to all of you, and welcome to my hometown of Selma.
Yes.
Thank you, Rep. Sewell, for such a wonderful and warm welcome to your hometown and to such hallowed ground. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tona Boyd, and I'm the Associate Director Counsel of the Legal Defense Fund. It is an honor to join you here in Selma today for this weekend's events to commemorate the 59th anniversary of the crossing of the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And we at LDF are pleased to host a very distinguished panel and to mark the occasion. But before we get to the panel, it is my privilege to welcome our keynote speaker to the stage. Now, we're here today to talk about democracy rising, but Senator LaFonza's Butler star has long been on the rise. She was raised in the great state of Mississippi, the land of my maternal ancestors as well, and is a proud graduate of the HBCU Jackson State University. Senator Butler has dedicated her life to advancing justice and equity for all, empowering communities in California and across the nation by uplifting the collective power of their voices. Throughout her formidable career, the senator's leadership and commitment in service of others has pushed boundaries and inspired change. Senator Butler's appointment to the United States Senate to represent the state of California was historic. She is the only Black woman currently serving in the Senate, one of just 4 Black senators this Congress, and she is only the 3rd Black woman ever to serve in that body. Now, with over 2 decades of experience as an organizer in the labor movement, Senator Butler has been a leader long before she was called to Congress. As president of SEIU, California's largest home care and nursing home workers union, Senator Butler successfully spearheaded numerous initiatives that had a profound impact in the state, uniting home care workers in their pursuit to live fairly and fully. She helped to orchestrate raising California's minimum wage to $15 an hour and secured paid sick days for the state's home care workers. During her tenure, she grew the SEIU's membership to more than 325,000 people. Senator Butler has also served as an expert strategist for various organizations, companies, and candidates. Immediately before her appointment to the Senate, Senator Butler was president of Emily's List, an organization dedicated to electing Democratic pro-choice women. Under her leadership, Emily's List recruited and supported over 600 women to run for elected office. Senator Butler has a demonstrated track record of working across lines of difference in order to make progress on issues that matter, and her service comes at a critical time for our democracy. We've all experienced the efforts to roll back critical civil rights protections that are foundational to a free and fair society, and we need leaders who are prepared to mobilize for a stronger and more equitable future. We're grateful to have Senator Butler here with us to pay homage to the true founding of our democracy here in its birthplace in Selma. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Senator Butler to the stage.
I am going to move Janae's notes so that I don't read them by mistake. Thank you all so much for having me. I am not going to give you keynote vibes today because you didn't come to listen to me. I hope we are all here to learn from this panel. Thank you, Tona, for a generous introduction. I know that my mother is probably very excited about all the things that you just said. But I could not be more grateful to be here with the community that is Selma, with all that Selma means to not just the folks who call Selma home, but to the region of this country. Selma has drawn both our eyes and our hearts to what is possible from places of despair. Selma has brought us together for moments of courage and ultimate sacrifice. Selma is the place where dreams truly have risen. And it is truly an honor to be here, Representative Sewell. I told you, I've heard you say you went to Selma High School 3 times this weekend. And I went to Selma High before I came here just because I was like, I gotta check this Selma High School thing out. And if you haven't gone by, it actually is quite a beautiful campus. Though I'm gonna pause for just a second and put the Senate thing to the side. If you drive whatever that street is that it's on, there is the school board building right next to it. The sign outside the school board says, let's reignite the light by attending class. And I couldn't figure out if that was a joke or if we have lost the center of all of the hope that this town has actually given from that bridge to Washington, D.C., to Los Angeles, California, and every place in between. And I want us all to just sort of, take that lesson away. That the thing that we are going to spend time talking about today, I'm sure, and the thing that is in my state happening on Tuesday in preparation for November, the thing that so many people spend so much time talking about as the biggest threat to the future of our democracy happening in November, we need not lose sight of what is happening in our classrooms, on our high school campuses, and colleges where it is not apathy but cynicism. And the belief in this thing that we call democracy that we truly have to be fighting for. But that's not why Janae asked me to come here. That was just a parking lot, driving by kind of message. I'm gonna leave that and hopefully we all carry it forward. I won't, again, sort of be before you long. The LDF asked me to do something 5 days after I was appointed to the United States Senate. They wasted no time. And I honestly didn't even know what it took to execute the thing that they asked me to do, but I knew I wanted to do it. and that was to bring the Senate Judiciary Subcommittee on the Constitution to Alabama, to this celebration, this commemoration of this moment in history that is true to all of us. I don't even know that Janae specifically said Alabama. She said do a hearing. And it was, I think, divinely ordered that we were able to pull it off and get so much support from organizations like Black Voters Matter and LDF and the Southern Poverty Law Center and all of your in-state affiliates. And the Congresswoman's office was just incredible to help us bring to light for the rest of the country the continued oppression and suppression that communities like what's happening here in Alabama are having to go through each and every day. And so to be able to have the gavel on this incredibly important subcommittee at a time such as this, as the Senate's only Black woman, as the Senate's, only the third woman to ever serve, feels like just a reminder from Vacation Bible School that I was in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing. And so thank you all for helping us to make that bit of history, but hopefully we were not just making it, but we are writing our future. So that when LDF is prepared to litigate on our behalf after Congress passes the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, we have worked to create the substantive record that is so important for that litigation. That's truly the reason that brought me here. Now, the people that brought me here, I think, would have a similar but different vantage point. You see, the people that brought me here, I shared with a group earlier, the people that brought me here are my mother, my grandfather, my grandmother. You see, I may be the senator from California representing 40 million people, but I am a daughter of the South. I was born and raised in a small town in Mississippi. I know what it is like to one day have your polling place right across the street from your historically Black college, where you have professors that were SNCC organizers and core organizers. I know that experience and how we all went together to go cast my first ballot as an 18-year-old, and my uncle was there and went with me as I was sharing this story last night with the family over at Southern Poverty Law Center. I know what that experience of transformation for a young person casting their first ballot with hope in their eyes and in real expectation of what is possible, because I lived it. I also know what it is like, for what it was like as it was described for my grandfather. You see, my grandfather was a sharecropper. He sharecropped as a strawberry farmer in Louisiana. And my grandfather was crippled from polio. And he and my grandmother had 11 children. My mother was number 6. She had 5 in front of her and 5 behind her. Everybody was telling her what to do. My grandmother was, at that time, referred to in her time, a maid. We call them domestic workers now. My grandmother was a maid. She took my mother and her sisters and brothers to the homes of the white families that she cleaned, as she was herself putting herself through a CNA class to try to make her children's needs easier to meet, and to frankly get her family off that farm. And today they have a granddaughter who is our country's third United States Black woman to serve as the United States Senator. And I realized this part of my story as I stood on the White House grounds as we were preparing as a nation to really take a hold of and lift up justice, Ketanji Brown Jackson, as she shared just her generation, her one generation's removal from sharecropping to the United States Supreme Court. Those moments of deep reflection and appreciation of the progress that we have made, all emanating right here from that Edmund Pettus Bridge. I was with April earlier today, and she made a declaration that she's in Selma today to raise the alarm, not out of fear, but out of hope, boldly declaring that we are winning. And when I think about Chief Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, I think about my own contribution and story. I think about Amanda Gorman. The progress that we are making. I think we indeed are winning. April is reminding us that we are winning. We are winning despite the systems that were designed for us to fail. We're winning despite the systems that were put in place to prevent us from having access. There's so much that we have to do. We're talking about the passing of the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act and the Freedom to Vote Act. There's so much for us to do. And there's still, and we indeed have so much to celebrate. And it is not lost on me the sign that stands outside the school board of Selma, Alabama. The juxtaposition, the two realities, how it is our job to make sure that we actually get to one. That's the work that LDF has done for us for almost 80 years. Doing the righteous work to get us closer to one reality for everyone. I will close by just offering, I was on the campus of Howard University recently, in the library. There's a room in the founder's library, the browsing room, where I was told, as I was on campus, I was told that this was the room that Thurgood Marshall actually prepared his arguments for Brown versus Board of Education. And you sit in that room and appreciate the contribution of the lawyers, of the network that is the totality of the civil rights movement. Not just the organizers and the activists, not just the young people and the professors, but the lawyers who truly have been our megaphone, who truly have been for 80 years, those who have been carrying our fight forward. And so to be here and be invited to be a part of a conversation that the Legal Defense Fund is having, knowing 5 days after I got appointed, they were telling me what to do then. I appreciate it very much, the role that this great organization has played in the story of an entire people, the story of a country whose story is still being written. You hold the pen. And for your writing, for your courage, I think I can speak for this entire group that we are truly grateful. John Lewis gets a lot of credit for saying a lot of things. He was always the congressman who told everybody what to do. And I think the credit he gets about inspiring all of us to get into good trouble, necessary trouble, is the line that I think sits in our hearts. As I stood in the interpretive center on the campus of Alabama State University yesterday, holding that hearing for the first time, I remember the words of Congressman Lewis being inscribed on the wall that have been really stirring my soul over the last 48 hours. And on the campus, in the quote, on the banner, it said, We don't choose the time, but time chooses us. I think it's appropriate because LDF has always, you've never chosen to be in the places that you have been, but time indeed has chosen you to be the holder of the pen, chosen you to be the lawyer for our country, chosen you to be all our conscience for 80 years. For 80 years. We owe you and this organization an incredible debt of gratitude. The sharecroppers of my family, those of Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson's, probably those of all of us in this room, we are today more free, on our way to liberation because of the Legal Defense Fund. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Butler. It cannot be overstated how much your leadership and your presence in the Senate means to us and the communities that we represent. Thank you so much. Janae mentioned him earlier, but I also want to make sure we give him his full recognition, the ranking member of the House Administration Committee, Congressman Joe Morrell. Thank you so much for your leadership and for being here. My next task is to introduce our moderator and today's panelists, but if I read the full biographies of today's panel, we would be here until very late into this evening. We have with us today some of the nation's most accomplished and renowned civil rights and racial justice scholars, activists, thought leaders, and practitioners. These are the leaders who are on the front lines every day for the fight for equity and justice. I will provide a brief introduction of each of our guests. I'm going to do the smart thing and start with my boss. Our President and Director Counsel, Janae Nelson, this month marks her 2-year anniversary as the leader of the nation's oldest and foremost civil rights law organization. We have Commissioner Devontae Lewis. He is a Louisiana Public Service Commissioner representing New Orleans and Baton Rouge. His election to the Public Service Commission in 2022 was historic for a number of reasons. He is the first openly LGBT person ever to be elected to state office in Louisiana, and the first, and he is the first Black openly LGBT person ever elected to any office in the state. He is also a named plaintiff in Robinson v. Landry, our challenge to Louisiana's congressional map. Please welcome my dear friend and client, Devontae Lewis. Next, we have Professor Nicole Hannah-Jones, who is the Pulitzer Prize-winning creator of the 1619 Project. Yes. She is also a staff writer at the New York Times Magazine. She also serves as the Knight Chair of Race and Journalism at Howard University, where she founded the Center for Journalism and Democracy. Please welcome Professor Jones. Our moderator this evening is a name that we all know very well, April Ryan. She is the only Black female reporter covering urban issues from the White House, a position she has held for over 26 years. 27 years, thank you. 27 years, thank you for correcting me. Since Bill Clinton was president, she is now also the longest serving Black woman in the press corps, and she is also the Washington, D.C. Bureau Chief of the GRIO. Please welcome our moderator this evening, April Ryan. Next, we have Alabama's very own DeWanna Thompson. DeWanna currently serves as the president and CEO of the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute, which is part of the Birmingham Civil Rights National Monument, and then an affiliate of the Smithsonian Institution. She is also the founder of Woke Vote. We are delighted to have her this evening. Please welcome DeWanna Thompson. Next, we have one of LDF's closest partners and allies in the movement. Cliff Albright is the co-founder of Black Voters Matter and the BVM Capacity Building Institute, and a former resident of Selma. He is a 2020 Soros Equality Fellow, and he has been featured in the Washington Post, the New York Times, and the Guardian. Please welcome Cliff Albright. And finally, we have our very own Leah Aiden, who currently serves as senior counsel. She previously was the deputy director of litigation at LDF. She is often referred to and cited as the top Black woman voting rights litigator in the country. Yes. Last October, she argued before the Supreme Court in Alexander versus NAACP, LDF's challenge to South Carolina's discriminatory congressional map. Aaliyah is such a role model for so many other lawyers on staff, and I am just honored to call her my colleague. Please welcome Leah Aiden. So that is our panel. I will now turn it over to Ms. Ryan to lead our conversation. Thank you.
Testing. There we go. There we go. All right. It sounds like you guys know what my mic sounds nice means. All right.
Yeah.
First of all, thank you, LDF, for this moment, this needed moment. Madam President, Madam Director, Madam Senator, Congresswoman Terry Sewell, who is in her city doing what she needs to do, Congressman, and all the distinguished guests here, thank you. Before I start, I want to say something. This is my second time in Selma, and it brings a lot of emotions for me. The first time I came was on Air Force One. How many Black folks can say they were on Air Force One?
I know that's right.
With the first Black president of the United States of America, Barack Obama. And when we crested up on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, I couldn't contain myself. I was born in 1967, 2 years after the Voting Rights Act. My parents always made a point to take me to the polls and made me watch them. Remember when you had those levers and that big pull thing? And I tried to do the same thing for my children. But today I came back and looked at that bridge. I had to reconcile in myself that bridge. That bridge means something to me and my family. That racist name bridge. I had to reconcile yesterday, 1965, when we had our rights, to today, to this day, in 2024, when we are now voting without the full protections of the Voting Rights Act. And we're wondering if people are going to go to the polls after all that happened for us. And I'm hopeful, but I'm realistic too. But I thank the LDF for what they did then, 59 years ago, helping to clear the way, the advocacy to clear the way so those foot soldiers could cross that bridge and give us the right to vote. Thank you. And with that, Madam President, and I saw you at the White House with the Vice President talking about voting rights this week. Thank you for your advocacy.
Yes,
now that, as a Black person in this nation, I took the reporter's hat off there, but I'm going back to reporting now. So, but Madam President, could you tell us why it's important for us to commemorate every year? And do you believe that our young people need to get more involved, and where are they in this process, the new generation of voters?
So thank you so much for that question, and thank you all for being here. I can't tell you how excited I am for this conversation. I want to say that I'm inspired by the young people of today. I say this often, that this generation has a degree of insistence and intolerance for nonsense that can be frustrating as a parent, but is absolutely right on time for this moment. They are demanding dignity. They're demanding that we see their whole person. They're demanding that we call them by the right name. They're demanding all the things that we were, too timid to ask for, or that we thought were really not attainable. And so I have a lot of inspiration that I'm drawing from young people today, and we need to be calling them in and not calling them out.
Right.
We need to recognize why they might be apathetic, but tell them the story that you just told about your parents and what it took. Tell them about the story that the testimony you just gave, and thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
It's moving, isn't it?
It's very moving, and it's okay to be emotional because
That's
we
right.
are being challenged right now.
That's right.
And so I'm really grateful for the recognition of this institution, but I'm just the caretaker of this moment for this precious, precious jewel that we have. And there's so many in the audience who were at LDF, who are at LDF. We do this together, and we do it out of love. We do it out of love. So this bridge crossing for us, it allows us to remember what's at stake, why we got here, how we got here, and what we need to do to keep it and advance it, right? So it's a template for us, and it's an opportunity to pay homage to those who came before us and to recognize the responsibility that we have in this moment. So for me, it is, it is something that we look forward to every year. And every year I see more and more young people here. So it is catching on. It is catching on, and they're ready. And we need to be here to support them.
That's right.
And you're right. This is an emotional moment because this is sacred space. Selma, to me, reminds me of land that time forgot. And I think it's intentional. They want us to remember what yesterday looked like, for us to see it yesterday, and they want to send a message, I believe. But, Juwan, I think of Alabamans as people who have to carry a large burden. You've been carrying a burden for a long time. And this has been the ground zero in 1965. This belt, the black belt, meaning rich soil, that's what they said. The black belt here. You carried us to victory. No more Roy Moore, right? In this area. And now, and then also with the issues of, in Alabama, where they were trying to get the DMV to stop with voter ID and all that stuff, that issue here in Alabama. But now, the weight again is still on your shoulders here in Alabama. How are Alabamans handling it? Do they understand the significance, how it reverberates throughout the nation? Oh, I'm sorry.
Was that to
It's
me?
you, yes. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm looking the wrong way.
No, I appreciate. And I was listening so intently, so I absolutely heard the question. But I'm honored to be here and to join this great cloud of witnesses that we are today. My name is DeWanna Thompson. I have the pleasure of serving as the president and CEO of the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute. And the question that I think Ms. Ryan posed is an incredibly important question, because sitting here in Selma at this moment, as Cliff and I both know, just last week, having to hear that yet again, we are fighting our own state and leaders for just the right to help somebody fill out an absentee ballot. Having worked in Georgia, where it's now criminal to give somebody water while they wait in the sun to register, to go and cast their vote. Having worked in Florida, where there are a plethora, 67 different counties with 67 different voter suppression laws in place. It is tiring. And I think for this up-and-coming generation, and for Alabamians particularly, we are looking at the threat of a couple of things. One is the attempt to erase even the thought of who we are as a people and our voting rights history from the same school books that have already taught us that we are inferior. So that's one. The second thing that they're fighting against, and we're fighting against, is this idea that somebody owns this history other than those who fought and bled for it. And that means that they feel like they can turn it and flip it and say it and believe it however they imagined it. It's a revisionist history. And so what we have a responsibility to do is to be truth tellers and historians. And we have a responsibility to reserve and preserve our history and tell that story in a way that motivates not just the next generation that's coming, because unfortunately for them, they are now 2 to 3 generations from what actually happened, so they don't always feel it as intentionally as my grandmother might. But it's our responsibility to remind them how to connect the dots. Okay, you may not have bled for this, but I guarantee you, when you go right now and try to get a job and you're being held up from getting that job because of what your skin looks like, you'll understand the importance of voting. When you don't have enough resources to take care of your baby, you'll understand the importance of voting. So you have to connect the dots, and that's what we're doing here. And I think the last thing is, I hate to say it, part of the reason why we have an issue is because those, even in our own communities who are in power, are holding on to that power until they die. They are not training the next generation of leaders with the same urgency that they had. And so there's a disconnect between the urgency of now and the urgency of behind us. So we are needing you to train us and give us the benefit of your wisdom and your leadership so that we can stand up in the same way that you did in those days.
What is it? All right, church, what is it? Train up a child?
In the way that she should go.
All right, church, train up a child.
She should go.
All right, I knew y'all were there somewhere. Thank you, Tawana.
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner, I'm coming back to you in a minute. I know who you are. You are such a bad sister.
Yes. Yes.
And I am so proud. The world is proud of you. Yeah. You're so bad.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
They're banning books because of you, girl.
That's right. That's right.
We going back to Carter G. Woodson, the miseducation of the Negro,
right.
because you got them banning books because you're telling so much truth.
That's right.
You're telling the truth of the negative and the progress. Mm-hmm. What is the truth in this moment of Selma as you see it? Mm-hmm. Come on, 1619.
I knew you were going to set me up there.
Right. I love that.
First of all, hello everyone. Thank you all for coming out for this conversation. Like you, Janae, it's emotional. It's always emotional being in Alabama, and it's particularly emotional being in Selma, both because Selma stands in for the everyday courage and resilience of everyday Black folks, but also the consequences that you pay for that courage. And we can see every year all these people come to Selma, and look how Selma looks. Look at the lack of investment for the people who have to live here every day, which is what happened during the movement. Folks came down during the movement, stayed in the movement for a couple years, and then the people who had to live in these communities remained behind to keep fighting those battles. So I think about that. I think about the consequence that a community like Selma pays, and the consequence that Black folks pay in general, always being told that we have to save this damn country from itself every election cycle. So I'll be honest, and I never get invited on panels. I hope to give hope, because that's not what I do. I don't inspire. I don't give hope. I'm here to.
You just tell it like it is. You just tell it like it is. Wait a minute. Senator, while you were talking, we looked at each other. We were like, wait a minute.
I mean,
hey, we got the hope. You saw it.
We need that, right? I'm always reminded that every right we have. I mean, the LDF personally came in for me when I was battling for tenure. And then all the rights that I experienced and all the rights that we experience as we go into the world, not all, but nearly all of them, have been litigated by the LDF, right? And so I know that people have to have hope. That's just not my thing. Because honestly, like when I'm sitting here, I don't think we're winning right now. Mm-hmm. I'm actually deathly afraid of where our democracy stands, that we are in a place where if the election doesn't go the right way, Black folks are going to be blamed for that, even though it's the majority of white people that will determine whether we have democracy or not. And that yes, we have to get out and vote, but we've been voting.
Come on.
And I understand the apathy of people who say, I vote every year. Every year, Democrats court my vote. And then, as soon as we save democracy and deliver for them, they drop us in our knees like a bad habit. That is an apathy that we have to speak to. We still have to say our ancestors' blood was shed on that bridge.
That's
and
right.
So we do have
That's
to vote anyway. But we also have to understand why some people are saying, you keep telling me to do the same thing, but I'm never getting results for that thing. I hope that we can win. I know that we come from a people who, despite every insurmountable odd, had to believe that we could win, but I also know that there was a lot of dying and a lot of suffering before we got those wins.
That's right.
And I think that we are in a, I don't even remember what your question was, April.
But you tell the truth. That's all it was. Just tell the truth about Selma. That's it.
I mean, truly, I think that we are heading towards a period where either, Dr. King loved to say that the arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. But I always say it was probably a circle, right? That
cyclical, yeah.
It's going to turn back on itself unless we bend it. It doesn't bend of its own volition. And I don't know that there's enough of us bending it towards justice right now. I think we have, we're at a precipice of something where either we're going to continue democracy and we're going to continue to move forward, or we're going to lose. And we're going to be in another 60-year battle to try to regain the rights that LDF and so many others and regular foot soldiers already won. So I'm the person that's like, I want you to maintain some hope, but I also want you to leave feeling a little bit sick to your stomach.
Right.
Because that's the thing that gives you urgency.
Yeah.
Because if you think everything is going to be okay, then you sit back and wait for it to be okay.
That's right.
But if you think, actually it's probably not going to be okay unless I get my ass out there and make it okay, then you get your ass out there and
That's
make it
right.
okay. And forgive me, elders.
The elders understand.
No disrespect for cussing, but I was raised in a cussing household, and sometimes that's the right word.
But no, seriously, I mean, I think that the minds need to meld the hope and optimism, but yet also the pain, the dis-ease of the reality. And I'm going to say this, I think also our mindset, our narrative is wrong. I think our narrative is wrong. The reason why we're losing ground is because we won so much.
Absolutely.
You believe that?
Disagree with
Absolutely.
it.
Okay,
Yeah.
we found a meeting of
I
the minds
definitely-
there.
yeah,
We met there. We met in the middle. Ooh, that was hard. But okay.
That's 27 years.
27 years. Give me my where's Jerry? Give me my year.
Right.
All right, Cliff.
I gotta follow that.
Yeah. But Cliff, here's where we are. You guys have done such a great job. Yes,
Absolutely.
you guys have done such a great job. I mean, I got in trouble every time y'all went in front of the White House protesting. They were punishing me. I was like, they out there with a gospel choir protesting for voting rights. Martin Luther King III's going to jail. And they didn't want me to talk about it because of you. You did it there. It's the truth.
It is.
And you did it in the South.
Yes.
And because of your footprint, people are watching you. Talk to us about your tactics in registering people to vote, particularly in the South where we have the largest numbers in the Southeast of black folks.
So, first off, I need y'all to help me out. When I say black voters, you say matter. Black voters!
Matter!
Black voters!
Matter!
All right, just check to make sure I'm in the right place. Before I answer that question, actually it is connected to the question, on this issue of Selma. We've talked about how it hasn't changed, it's stuck in time. Think for a moment about what that means for folks who live here.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right? Like even this commemoration this weekend is a challenge for folks who live here. Because what they see is a celebration of something which the rest of the country benefited from more so than they did.
That's
Talk
right.
on it, Cliff.
Preach.
Right? And so, so I say that for a couple of reasons. One, before we leave here, find Congress Member Sewell and find out what we can all do to help with that process, right? So that's the first thing I wanted to say. But that's related to the question. Because part of our tactics of how we do what we do, and we got a great team, and some of them are here, so I want to shout them out. But part of the tactic of how we do what we do is that we don't try to ignore that lived experience.
That's right.
Because that's the lived experience of folks in Selma, but it's also the lived experience of folks in Atlanta and across the middle Georgia and southwest Georgia. You know, when we talk about voting, and we've said it here, right? Oh, somebody died for you, right? That's not enough, right? And when people say that they're skeptical, when they say that they're frustrated, it does us no good to act like they just lazy.
That's right.
Or they just crazy.
That's right.
Or that they don't appreciate that somebody marched and bled
That's
for them.
right.
Or it does us no good to not acknowledge that they are not making up some stuff.
That's right.
Like there really is some voter suppression, right?
There's some problems.
There
yeah.
really are some problems. There really are some elected officials, present company excluded, but some elected officials that have let us down.
Yeah.
And so it does us no good to act like the person at the door that we are talking to is making up that experience. So part of how we do what we do is just by being willing to acknowledge that. So the first thing I always say, and we teach our staff this, and the partners that we work with, is that when somebody says that, don't dismiss it, don't walk over it, don't go to the next door. The first thing I say is, you know what, I hear you, and I feel you. I do this work every day, and I feel the same way too, right? But now we can have a discussion, because I'm not just talking at them, I'm not ignoring what they were saying. Now we're coming at some common ground, and now we can get into the bigger question. Tell me what it is that you want
Right.
for yourself, for your family, for your community, right? Let's start there and have a discussion about that. Because when we do that, and when we talk about education, right? And what the young folks want at their schools, when we talk about gun violence, right? When we talk about the fact that we got a whole generation, y'all, for real, we got a whole generation who has literally grown up doing active shooter drills. I didn't have that experience, right? And so when we talk about what it is that they want, now we're in a different kind of discussion. When we don't center, and this is gonna sound crazy, right? Because you asked me about the registration. When we don't center the voting process, but when we center the person,
That's right.
right? When we don't center the form that's on the clipboard, but we center their hopes and their dreams and their visions, now we can get somebody to maybe get involved.
That's right. That's right.
That's why we call the organization Black Voters Matter,
Right.
and not Black Votes Matter.
That's right.
Because there's a lot of folks that care about black votes
That's right.
that don't give a damn about black votes.
That's right.
So we named it what we did intentionally because we center our people.
That's right.
That's the important thing. It's not the process.
That's right.
It's our people. Now, with that said,
All right.
there's some folk that are trying to block that process.
That's right.
And we got to deal. That's why we was out there marching and protesting in front of the White House.
Yeah.
That's why we're fighting now for the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act
That's right.
and the Freedom to Vote Act, which John Lewis wrote the first third of, right? So it's not just the bill that's named after him, it's the bill that he put a whole lot of time and thought into.
That's good.
We
Cliff.
need both of them,
Yeah.
right? And so, yes, our tactic is by centering our people, centering their hopes and dreams, and this is important, y'all, by recognizing we got to have some space for some black love and black joy and black love. Because it's a hard process, what you were just describing, Nicole, right? This is some hard history, and this is some hard work that we do. But we got to find some love. That's why we get off that bus singing and dancing and doing all that stuff. Not just because I like to sing and dance, right? It's actually hard on my knees, right? But we know that our folks need that
That's right.
and deserve to have a little joy in this process so that it's not just a burden, it's something that we want to celebrate, right? So we got to find some space for that, and we try to do that. And the last thing I'm going to say is that we got to be unapologetic about saying that the goal, y'all, is power. Somebody say power.
Power.
Say it like you mean it. Say power.
Power.
Now, don't mess around and put black in front
Uh-oh.
of you. Now you done scared some folks,
Uh-oh.
right?
I'm not mad.
You not mad? But we got to, because that's what our folks want. That's what they are hungry for. And when we dance around that issue, folks can sniff it out.
That's right.
And they know that we're not talking about something real,
That's
right? We're not centering a candidate. That's not what we're about.
That's right.
We are talking about power. and what we have to do to get it, and more importantly, how do we use the power that we got? When we use that, this is the last thing I'm gonna say real quick. We have we do texting. We sent about 15 million texts last year.
How many texts a day?
Oh God, well, 15 million divided by 365, whatever that is. But we send out a lot of text messages, a lot of phone calls, a lot of door knocks. But we have a bunch of volunteers that help us with our texts. And the other week, I was in the chat and they were talking. And these are volunteers that they do this for other organizations in a bunch of states. And they were saying, not just one, but multiple. They were saying, y'all, I text for a lot of people and I've been doing this for years. I've never seen the response rates that I see when I text for Black Voters Matter. And somebody else chimed in and said, yeah, I've experienced that too. And somebody else chimed in, yeah, it's the craziest thing. It's not crazy. There's a science to it because we communicate with our folks in a way that gets them to respond, right? And so we use language rooted in love and power and joy, and that's how we get folks to be engaged. And the last thing is that we got to do it 365 days out of the year. Don't come knocking on my door 2 weeks before the election talking about, I need you to save democracy. And you wasn't there a few months ago when there was a tornado in Selma.
Right.
Or you weren't there in Cancer Alley when we was passing out from sickness. Or you weren't there when we were suffering from high maternal mortality rates because we got no more reproductive health. So don't come knocking on my door 2 weeks asking for my vote if you weren't there early in the year when we really needed you.
That's right.
You asked.
I asked and I got it, yes. And here's a slogan for you that I'm sure you use. Fired up and ready to go. Yeah. That's you right now. You need a collar too.
Always.
Leah, he was preaching, wasn't he? So Leah, you're a litigator. I know who you are, okay? And South Carolina, the congressional maps, you're dealing with this in the Supreme Court. Talk to us about that, and then how does it relate to Selma?
Yes.
The connection.
So I would be remiss if I didn't mention that we're in South Carolina, but we didn't have to be in South Carolina. Just like our colleagues did in Georgia and Louisiana and Alabama, across the country, we implored the legislature after the 2020 census to acknowledge Black power.
Your mic.
Can you hear me better?
Yeah, pull it up. Yeah, pull it up a little bit more.
We implored them to pass fair maps that reflected the power of Black people in all of the places in our country where we know we exist and where we matter. But they, in South Carolina, just like in Alabama and Louisiana and Texas and Georgia, all the places formerly covered by Section 5, ignored our power. And in South Carolina, the legislature enacted a congressional map that bleached 62 of Charlestonians. I don't know what to do.
If you could just take it and hold it. Just take it and hold it.
Bleached, is that better? Bleached 62 of Black Charlestonians from the coastal district in CD1 and dumped them into an existing majority-minority district. And they didn't just target Democratic-leaning districts, they targeted the heaviest Black precincts and bleached them. And for our part, LDF got involved in this and raised constitutional claims, raising that you cannot, in one context, say you cannot use race excessively, even to pursue diversity in education, but then in the context of redistricting, excessively use race for your partisan advantage. So we challenged it under the Constitution, and we got a unanimous panel to agree that there was racial, not partisan gerrymandering. You cannot explain this by partisanship, and that the goal of the design of this district was to minimize the power of Black voters. And this case is important to us, just like our advocacy to create a second additional district in Alabama, a second additional congressional district in Louisiana and elsewhere, because our votes matter even when we're not in the majority. We have constitutional rights even when we are a minority or not close to being a majority. And it's also the case that the legislatures cannot hide behind partisanship and harm Black voters on the way. And we don't care who does that. We don't care who's in power who harms Black voters. So we challenge this congressional districts drawing for those reasons. We are awaiting a decision now, like much of the country is awaiting the Supreme Court to act on a lot of different important issues. And we're hopeful that we get a second district. And this would be on top of the advocacy that my colleagues have done to create fair opportunities for, again, Alabama, Louisiana, at the congressional, state, and local level. So that's, in short, what it's about.
Thank you so much. I love when a lawyer tries to give us a layman's term, of everything. You follow along, but it's still important, and we need to know this because the challenge against blackness is real in 2024. This is not 1965. It's, what would you say? This is more of a sophisticated kind of move against black voters,
Not even
right?
that sophisticated.
What'd you say?
I said it's not even that sophisticated.
Really? Well, tell us what you feel.
No, I've already spoken. Just mumbling under my breath over here.
That's why we love you. That's why we love you. Commissioner, you are represented by the LDF in a case where it's Robinson versus Landry, and in the Voting Rights Act challenge that led to the enactment of a new congressional map in Louisiana with a second majority black district. You had a front row seat to this process for your community. Now, to the legislature and the courthouse, what did you see, and also what motivated you to take up this case and your experience working in the multi-tactic advocacy towards this historic win?
Absolutely, and thank you.
And that was very legalese.
That was.
Yes.
I'll answer it.
Yes.
I mean, when we think about Louisiana is the second blackest state in the nation. 33% of our population is black. And my mom's been a teacher for almost 20-something years. I was an educator, and I learned math very early that 1/3 of 6 equals 2.
Right.
Now, I know they're banning books, but it looks like they also were banning math because the Louisiana legislature just would not believe that we should be entitled to equal math. We weren't talking about significant racial progress. We were talking about arithmetic.
That's right.
Education, the one thing that we were taught. And so this fight in Louisiana has been going on for years. I think back just 5 years ago, I was with Cliff, and we were at the Southern University's campus taking students to go vote in our gubernatorial election. And one of the things that they kept talking about is they didn't see themselves in government. They didn't see their future and their potential. And so when I took the witness stand during our special redistricting session, I had called my grandmother, and I looked back generations and found my triple great grandmother had written a note that she passed on down that says, "Do you see me? Do you hear me?" And that's what I took to the legislature. And I looked them in the eye and I said, "Do you see us? Do you hear us? Because all we are asking for is just the representation that we should be given." And it made me think, as I was preparing that testimony and thinking about that moment, that there was no right in my life that I could think of that a court didn't give me. And I asked the legislator, I said, maybe this time you will give it to us, so I don't have to sue, so we don't have to fight and litigate. And we saw they did, but what the beauty of that moment and the work with LDF is that we started organizing and talking about this issue early.
That's right.
In Louisiana, we have road shows across the state. In every road show, you saw droves of black people turning out, young, old, at night in Monroe and Lake Charles and Shreveport. We weren't just in New Orleans. We even showed up in Lafayette, where it's not even one of our black cities. And to so much that they had to do another show to say, let's talk about the actual interest of the people of Acadiana. And when we saw that little bit of spark and that little bit of hope, but that it requires work, right? That we couldn't stop just at those road shows. So when it came to the testimony in the Capitol, we saw those same people come in. We had a special session just a month ago to create this map that you talked about, and it was during the winter vortex. We had planned about 200 people to come to the Capitol. Ice was all over the roads. The place that was going to house us canceled because state buildings were canceling. So Jared said, "Where are we going?" So I said, "Well, we can use my office. It'll only be like 15 people." There was around 70 of us. Crammed in students drove down from Grambling in the middle of the night in an icy road to stand in front of the Capitol and say, "Will you pass this map?"
Wow.
And in that moment, we saw our activism, that work, that years-long mobilization and organization lead to Louisiana with a supermajority Republican legislature and a governor who is Republican pass a map with 2 black congressional districts.
Come on.
So the work is there, but what I would say is why we can't always just be hopeful is because the moment we closed our eyes and we stopped, 3 weeks later, that same legislature and that same Republican governor called a special session on crime and now has added nitrogen gas to our death penalty, has taken away the right to be parole eligible and erased good time. Now you have to stay in jail your whole time, changed our adjudication for juveniles, and took over what they say the crime-ridden city of New Orleans.
Because you won.
Because we won. And so it's a reminder that every time there's a situation of black progress in this country, there's a significant white backlash that comes.
That's right.
It's blacklash.
And if
blacklash.
I like that. And so if we are not open-minded to know that while we are hopeful for the vision in front of us, that means we celebrate today, but we work tomorrow.
Tonight.
We will see them turn the times again on us.
Celebrate today and work tomorrow. No, these folks are working as soon as we get out of here. That's, he's going to be preaching and dancing.
Work while you're drinking. We say work while you're drinking, Louisiana.
Yeah.
That's my motto.
Are you guys enjoying this conversation? I'm glad. It is so important. But Commissioner, you said something that piqued my curiosity. Not just my curiosity, it was impactful. You said your triple great-grandmother. How many years ago was that?
That took us all the way back to the early 1900s, I want to say.
Can you see me? Can you hear me? And then you talked about, because I'm going to tell you, Louisiana, places down south can't handle snow, ice. And for them kids to get on the road, Grambling to come.
That's true.
About 3.5 hours, 4 hours.
Because they felt the urgency. That's powerful. That's powerful. You can clap, go ahead. You can clap. But that brings me to you, Professor. So, yes, one of your many great hats. Our children are so connected, more so than I was. My mother would never have given me a $1,000 phone. But that $1,000 phone, these kids are seeing and hearing the world. They're engaged. What are you hearing about on this campus and the kids that you mentor about their dis-ease or their acceptance of what's happening here with democracy and globally?
I don't think that they're accepting it. And I'm going to second what Janae said, though I often look in rooms like this and we're asking about the youth and there's no youth in the room.
Wait a minute, how many youth are in the room under 21? How many youth are in the room? Raise your hand. Oh, you are not, stop. But your heart is there, I know it. How many, okay, thank you for being here. Where are you, what school are you from? Okay.
That's also Janae's daughter, so that don't count.
Well, that's all right. So, but you know what? You count because you could be somewhere else. You could be out there dancing at the bazaar and shopping. So, how many people here are 35 and under? All right. I still call that young.
That's because we're old, so that's young to us.
Speak for yourself. Anyway. But anyway, moving on. So, but thank you. I mean, it takes every generation.
That's right.
It takes every generation for the struggle. Go ahead, finish what you were saying.
Yeah, I mean, I think that young people, one, are very concerned. I think young people organize. They may not organize in the way that my generation organized. And I think a lot of times we as older people, whatever older may mean, spend a lot of time talking down on our young folks. Yes. And so we talk down on them, and then they wonder why they don't come to us. We wonder why they don't seek mentorship from us, or why they might become apathetic. But I know, so I live in New York City. My husband and I have been very active in school equity integration movements. And those young folks were organized. They were doing sit-ins. They were writing up, 20-point integration plans. They were going down to the administration. Like, I think that again, being in a place like Selma, where I just was over with Miss Ann, we're trying to help build the Foot Soldier Park over there. 8 years old the first time she got arrested. So tell our children these stories, because that is what links, right? Like, the reason why they're banning our history, the reason why they're banning Black history in particular, is because Black history is inherently political. Yeah. Because you cannot believe in any of the myths about America and deal with Black people. Anytime you want to talk about American exceptionalism, American being the oldest democracy in the world, the freest country in the world, here we are, and you have to explain, why are we even here? Right. Why has every moment of our existence been a struggle to proclaim the same rights that you get by birthright? And so they ban that history. But they ban that history because you kill social justice movements by killing our understanding of why we need social justice. That's why they do that. So if you don't teach a child, 8-year-olds are out here marching and getting arrested. That social movements have always been led by young people. That John Lewis was a college student. Diane Nash was a college student, right? The sit-ins were led by college students. These are high school. Claudette Colvin was a high school student. If you don't teach them that, and then you wonder why they don't understand that they can get out and be activists while those of us who have mortgages stay at home, right? So I think that I'm not ever a person who feels afraid because I don't think our youth are doing enough. I feel afraid because I don't think we're doing enough.
Ooh, come on.
That's what I feel afraid of. I always tell people, now everybody in hindsight is like, oh, I marched with King. Most of y'all didn't, right? Most people, it's just the fact. Most people are never part of any social movement. You always are looking back, but what are you doing right now? Because whatever you're doing or not doing right now is what you would have been doing or not doing back then. If you're not out being an activist now, if you're not out here fighting for these rights right now, whatever way you fight, I'm a journalist, right? So I'm not ever going to be at a protest unless I'm writing about it. But my role is to bear witness, right? My role is to let you know this is what these folks are doing so you know how to fight it, and then somebody has to fight it. And somebody has to support the work that Cliff is doing, that this sister is doing, that Janae is doing. But most of us are not. So again, I just talk about what I want to talk about. Y'all might notice that.
And we love it.
But I think about, you think about these curriculum bans. And you think about that, a handful of white moms in a white nationalist moms movement. That's what Moms of Liberty is. It's a white nationalist moms movement who don't even have their kids in the school.
Come on.
Can show up at a school board meeting and change what our children can learn about themselves. That only happens because we weren't there. Because I know from covering education for damn near 20 years, 5, 10 people show up at a school board meeting, you get policy change. That's what they know. That's why 5, 10, 15 of them showed up and got our history banned while we're sitting here crying about it. We could be down at those meetings getting our history reinstated.
That's it.
So that's what I got to say. I don't know. I'm not worried about the youth. I'm worried about us.
So my good girlfriend, let me ask you this though. Have we ever really been properly educated about our history? No.
Of course not.
Again, I'm going back to Carter G. Woodson in the 1919, the miseducation of the Negro. This is not new.
No, of course not, right? I mean,
and I'm not saying that it's right, but I'm just saying we have never been educated properly.
It's not, but there's no excuse for us not educating our youth properly.
That's right.
Right? I mean, everyone from Malcolm X to Assata Shakur said you don't let the enemy educate your children.
That's right.
So us sitting here depending on them to properly educate our children means our children, of course, won't be properly educated. And I like to think of myself as a prime example why they don't want to educate you on your history. I took one semester Black Studies elective in high school, and I've been incorrigible ever since. Right. A little bit of knowledge of self, right? Because there's a reason we're the only people in the history of the United States of America for whom it was ever illegal to learn to read and write. And there's a reason for that.
Yes.
If I don't let you read about freedom, you don't know that freedom can be had.
Yeah.
If I don't let you understand that people have been working on behalf of your liberation, you don't try to seek those people out and think that's possible. So they intentionally don't teach us our history or themselves their own history to control us, and it works. So yeah, there's a reason they ban the books, then they ban the vote.
That's right.
Because if you don't understand why we needed a Voting Rights Act, that you can pass race-neutral policy and have a race-specific result, right? Grandfather clauses don't have to mention race. They couldn't after 15th Amendment. Literacy tests, not race-specific, but they are applied and enforced in a race-specific way. So then when they pass these laws now that are not race-specific, we can say, look, they don't mention Black people, they don't mention race. It can't be in violation of the Voting Rights Act because you don't know the history that shows you this is a roadmap, and that's exactly what they're doing. So we have to take our children's history into our own hands, but we also can't see the public sphere because most American children attend a public school. So we can't just say, I'm going to educate my child. All these children have to learn this history. We have to get down and we have to understand we pay a lot of attention to what happens every 4 years, but most of what impacts our lives happens at the local, the county, the state level.
Thank you.
I'm just all off course.
No, that's right.
No,
you
are not, sis. You got it. You right on the pulse. And as you talk about teaching, what are the lessons that we've learned from 60 years ago, Duana? What are the lessons we've learned? And what are the resources that we need in this moment to get people to vote?
I really hate coming after Nicole.
Both of y'all preach now.
But
this whole panel is preaching.
Well, I think what we've all been talking about, though, really at the core of it is power. And what we learned from the 1950s and the 1960s is that they had a radical imagination around power and who has it and how to get it. And one of the things that, and this goes to what Nicole just said at the end of her remarks, is that I do believe that it is a little bit short-sighted to think that the only way we get power is through electing a president and through electing Congress.
Yes.
When pretty much everything that impacts our lives happens on the local level every day. So I need people running for school board. I need people running for city council. I need people running for the transportation committee. I need people running for housing, because these boards and agencies, I think I was telling a group in the city of Birmingham where I'm from, there are over 190 boards and agencies that dictate how our living conditions are in the city. Most of those boards are either appointed or you run for them, and many of those boards have budgets, million-dollar budgets attached to them. So when I'm talking to my community and the young people in my community about power and a radical imagination around power, I'm not just saying run for mayor.
Yeah.
I'm saying go get on that transportation committee. Yeah. Go get on the water board. Go get on all of these other committees that actually impact our ability to change the material conditions of our own communities. Because our ancestors and our foot soldiers, they understood that. And they understood if they got on the bus and disrupted the system, that it would have to have an impact. They understood selective buying campaigns. Yes. They understood the power of their money. They understood that if they shifted things and the dynamics politically, socially, educationally, that was a power that had to be communicated and had to be responded to. And so those are the lessons that we learned. They also understood that there is something powerful about Black joy and about faith and about taking the moment to center ourselves as we do this work. They understood, and not always well, the power of the Black woman. They understood, and not always well, that everybody can't do everything. So we talk about my beloved Harry Belafonte.
Oh, yes.
Who funded so much of the movement, and yet when I just went to the Grammys the other day, they forgot to even give him his just due. They didn't understand what was walking among them all of this time.
He
It's our
funded
story
the
to tell.
women's movement.
He funded the women.
He
He
funded
funded
the
so many
women's movement.
components of, because he understood at 78 when I started working with Mr. Belafonte, he told us something that I thought, that I have never forgotten. He said, we got you your liberty, but we forgot to teach you the strategies. And so he wanted to use the rest of his life to embed in us, and leaders my age at that time, I was 25 or 24, here are the strategies to how you get free. You might be free now, but you're gonna have to come back up against this thing again because it's in the very fabric of this country. And so how do you stay free? What are those strategies? And that's what we can learn. That's why places like the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute is important. That's why places like Howard University is important. That's why Claudette Gay should still be at Harvard, right? And so because somebody has to be strong enough and powerful enough and bold enough to say, no, you're not going to tell this story the way it benefits you, or not tell it at all. You have to tell it in its totality, and you have to make sure that those who hear it understand what to do with it once they hear it. You got to create the space. And lastly, I would say what has to happen. We can vote all day, but this funding and the way in which we put resources behind, the way in which we engage black voters has got to change. Black voters are the least funded demographic in this entire country when it comes to voting. We're the least funded when it comes to education. We're the least funded when it comes to entrepreneurship. We're the least funded when it comes to all the different things. And yet we are first, particularly black women, in every last one of those categories. Why? Because we know what to do with little.
Yes.
We know what to do with little.
Can you say chitlins?
You know, my mom always,
it's a joke. You think it's a joke, but no, let me tell you, when we don't have anything, we know how to make a meal and make us survive. We know survival. Other communities can't do. You might laugh about a chitlin, but I'm gonna tell you.
But we're not demanding the little anymore. We're demanding the whole. And that is what we have to teach, and that's what the 50s and the 60s can teach us, is that they demanded something that they knew that they were worthy of and that they deserved. And they had strategies around that, and everybody wasn't the same. The Black Panther Party wasn't the same as SNCC, wasn't the same as LCLC, but most of them came right out of this community that you're talking about right now. Black Panther Party, they started here in other places. So we have to know that in order to be able to push all of us, not just the young people. The young people actually know a lot more. And they are the most voting demographic in this country right now. Please don't think that they are disconnected. They voted at a higher rate than any other demographic in the last 2 elections that we had. Check the facts and the numbers. They're just mad.
That's right. And they have reason.
And I am too. And that's what's motivating me to do this work, and I'm sure all of us up here to do that work.
Frederica Newton, the widow of Huey P. Newton, told me that the majority of the Black Panther Party wasn't the optics of those good-looking men in leather jackets and tams that were holding guns. They were open carrying, and then they were vilified. Now everybody's open carrying. You know, they flipped it on us. But 70% of the Black Panther Party happened to be women. Did you know that?
Yep.
Frederica Newton, the widow of Huey P. Newton, said they did it out of love. Their service was out of love to the community.
Well, also, if you look at their strategies, they were talking about education. They were talking about
Sickle
food. They were talking about people.
Exactly
Of course, it was
what's
black
happening
women.
now. Yes.
So, excuse my language.
No,
but you know, but just look at the policy. And
they were mad at them then, and they're funding our kids. Look, in COVID, they were feeding our kids, weren't they? They're feeding our kids. The federal government's feeding our kids. We got health care centers now.
That's right.
You know, they didn't want them then, but now we got federally funded healthcare centers. And what's his name? Javier Posada, the head of health, the HHS. Yes, I got to remember all my secretaries.
Right.
Yes, the head of HHS said that they are working on a strategy now on sickle cell to come up with new therapies for a cure. They're going to each state to talk to them about new therapies. Isn't that something? But they were vilified back then when they were talking about sickle cell. You know, but I can't help but also you got me thinking about how many of you watched the movie Genius on Hulu and finished watching it? The last one. King and X, MLK and X. You know the end, but it shook me. And when you talk about the blueprint, I watched it, I just finished it, and I was so angry I was hurt because all that they went through for us, they lost their lives for us. And look at where we are today. Trying to reignite the fire, find the blueprint again. Mm-hmm. You were a young man running for government in the South. You made it, but how did that happen? In a time when anti-woke, anything black is anti-woke, and it seems like when people are told no, we push more, there are more black people running now and feel like they want to be engaged, but how did that work for you in the South, in a red state?
Yeah.
Yeah.
To Dewan's point, I was mad. and I being here reflects actually, being commissioner wasn't my first race, it was my second. Mm-hmm. And my first race actually was for school board. Mm-hmm. And I was 18.
I love that.
And I'll tell you why. I was in an AP government course, the only black kid in the AP government course. And my high school had gotten overpopulated, and there was a bond up to build a 9th grade campus, put a gym and all this. But most of the community that surrounded the high school were white, and said they weren't going to vote for it unless we handled what they saw was a problem, which was busing. Mm-hmm. Mm. And so the school board president, who's the former principal of my high school, came to that AP government course to make the case why we, the young people, should be the face of the movement of ending busing in Calcasieu Parish, Louisiana. And he came and he made his case, and then I guess he forgot that I was also the president of the debate team at the time. So we had a little debate about this. And he stopped me after a few minutes, and he looked me in my eye and he said, "Devontae, why do you care so much?" And I said, "Well, Mr. Youngblood, I am one of those bus students."
Right.
And without skipping a beat, he said, "Well, you know, for a student like you, there would be an exception." And I said, "Well, my sister's a freshman. What about her?" He says, "Well, I guess it has to be a family exception." I said, "Well, my cousin's also a freshman. What about him?" And we kept going, and he said, "You know what, Devontae, if you care so much, and if you think you know so much, why don't you run? Why don't you do something?" So on my graduation day, against the will of my mother, when I walked across and got my diploma, I handed him a little paper, and I said, "I'll see you on the campaign trail. I'm running for school board."
Oh, that's right.
And I did it. And while I didn't win that race, I kept that sentiment in working. And the reason it was now 12 years from that moment to the race that I won on the Public Service Commission is because for me, I didn't view politics as this opportunity of privilege. I saw it as power. Mm-hmm. And I said I would rather build power for my people than be a person in power. Mm-hmm. And so when I saw an opportunity on the Public Service Commission, which for those of you who may not know is the utility regulators.
I love that.
The only 10 states in the country elect their commissioners. And I don't think it's a coincidence that it's my state of Louisiana, here in Alabama, the state of Mississippi, the state of Georgia. And I recognized that there was a moment where I represent Cancer Alley, where if you're black, you're 9 to 21 times more likely to be exposed to air pollution in my district. A place where there are more petrochemical refinery plants than there are schools and churches. When you think about it, Shell has 4 petrochemical refinery plants in the United States. 3 of them are in my district.
Oh my God.
And I saw a moment and I said, I can't wait any longer. Because I didn't see anyone taking up that fight. I didn't see anyone bringing our fight and bringing our message to it. And I said, well, Devontae, if not you, then who? And I had to ask myself that hard question, and I decided to run. I challenged an 18-year incumbent from a historic political family in New Orleans. The governor cut 2 commercials against me. No politician endorsed me. But I said, I feel something for my people, and I'm gonna do this work. And we won by 20 points.
I love that.
Unbeknown to everybody else, youngest person.
That's crazy.
Youngest person in Louisiana's history to sit on the commission, youngest commissioner in the country right now, and only the 3rd black person. And when I think about that, I have to give credit to my foremother, Miss Irma Muse Dixon, who was the first black commissioner, got there, but in 1992, the year I was born, Louisiana, one of the blackest states in the nation, did not get a black person regulating utilities until the year that I was born. And now here I am, the third black person in the state's history to sit on that commission. But it's, as DeJuan was saying, it is where power is, because that we regulate your utilities. But also what was important is Louisiana is known as the incarceration capital of the world, but at the Public Service Commission, we regulate the rates that you pay for phone calls. So when we talk about the exorbitant amount that it costs people to call their loved ones to rehabilitate them in prison, it was the commission that was giving all these contracts away and letting it run. So there was power in that role, but everybody was looking to be congressman. Everybody was looking to be senator and leaving power at the table.
That's right.
And so I think that's why you see young people like me stepping up, is because we cannot wait anymore. I often say, look, I don't want a seat at the master's table. I ran because the master's table needed to be replaced. And I'm not going to get this position and assimilate to the system that kept me out for so long. So if I'm not up there bringing our voices and our power and shaking the table as Jesus did, because he shook a table, then why am I there? And I think that is what we need in this moment, is reminding ourselves that we are not here forever.
No, we're not.
And in closing, I tell this to people all the time. I think about my service not as a sprint of how fast I can get every one of my goals done. I don't even think about it as a marathon, how long I can be in it. I think about it as a relay race. My job is to get the baton in somebody else's hand just like they put it in mine.
That's right.
And that works with it.
What does Shirley Chisholm say? If you don't have a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. Well, now we are making the table. We are convening our own tables. You know, isn't that something? The whole table.
That's right.
It's like a 12-seat dining room table, and we just cramming everybody in. We have 5 minutes according to Jared, so we're going to do a lightning round, if you will, for the rest of them. Leah, what is the current state of the policy battles and access to the ballot that you see moving forward?
There's a lot of opportunity. Do I need to hold this?
Oh, yes, please. Yeah.
There's a lot of opportunity. You must have heard all weekend about the reintroduction of the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. We desperately needed to restore and strengthen the pre-clearance process that would have stopped Texas's redistricting map, Galveston's destruction of a commissioner's district, the water prohibition and criminalization of providing people water in line to vote in Georgia, just hundreds of bills, many, many votes, and all of the policies that have flowed from them since 2013 when the Supreme Court decimated the pre-clearance process. It also would respond to the radical decision out of the Eighth Circuit where the court said that private plaintiffs, folks in this room and elsewhere who have been bringing voting rights litigation for the past 50 years, that they have no right to do that, that only the Attorney General of the United States has the authority to do that. It would clarify that that's absolutely against precedent and the past record. And it would also build the power that the Voting Rights Act provides, where there are communities where Black and Latino or Black and AAPI voters are voting together to harness their power for change. And it would clarify that those voters have a right to bring claims and have remedies that speak to the cross-racial power that we also need to harness. So that is one bill. Cliff raised that. You should be hearing about it all weekend. There's the Freedom to Vote Act, which we should fight for because of the efforts of John Lewis and others to introduce it. And it would respond to these bills in Alabama that are attacking and criminalizing third parties for working with voters. It would respond to the lack of same-day voter registration, the lack of automatic voter registration, the lack of widespread absentee voting. So that is something that we need to be urging be introduced. At the same time, because we don't leave everything to our federal government, there has been a movement across the country to have state voting rights acts. California was a leader of it many years ago, and that has led to, at the local level, which we've been hearing about today, access to school boards, county commissions, city councils for Black, Latino, and AAPI voters. And most recently, New York has adopted a state voting rights act, Connecticut, and there are movements in New Jersey, in Michigan, in Maryland, all over the country to stand in the gap that we lack because of the Shelby County decision of 2013. And I would be remiss if I did not mention that there is a continuing need to focus on the rights of returning citizens, people with felony convictions. In 2018, Florida had a constitutional amendment that was meant to restore the vote to more than 1 million people with felony convictions, disproportionately black. This legislature then came behind that and set up a pay-to-vote system where people have to pay hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in order to vote, which has meant that that group of returning citizens is shut out of the process. People cannot have a voice in the political process in Florida. And now the officials are investigating and prosecuting returning citizens for registering and voting in error, further criminalizing people who the collective citizenry in Florida says they have a right to participate. So that is an issue not just in Florida. Tennessee is dealing with it. Alabama, Mississippi is dealing with the rights of returning citizens. And I think those are some of the most pressing policy issues. There's something for everyone to do, some bill that everyone should be urging their representatives at every level of government to pass.
Cliff, is there anything that you feel that's not getting in the air when it comes to issues of voting and access to the ballot?
A lot, you know. There's a lot of discussion right now about like what black voters going to do. Like, are we going to turn out? What's the enthusiasm and all that? And I think the biggest thing that's missing whenever you hear that discussion or you see those polls is, you know, people act like turnout is just a function of motivation. That's right. And that's important, but like the voting rights framework is also important. Mm-hmm. And so some places where we've seen turnout go down were the very states, Georgia, Florida, Texas, that had the worst voter suppression bills. Mm-hmm. Flip side is when you've got a trifecta in a place like Michigan and you actually expand access, a crazy thing happens. Turnout goes up, right? And so it's really not rocket science. So I think that narrative is lost. Just last two things, just really quick. You know, we've had a lot of discussion about are we winning, are we losing? The deal is this, y'all. If you're playing spades, you don't start to renege when you win it, right?
No, you renege because you're cheating.
Exactly,
You
right?
know.
So the point is, the reason that people are cheating, the reason they're reneging is because they are losing, right?
Yeah, because
So
you're cheating.
now they might be getting some wins, they might be slowing down justice, they might be doing a lot of stuff, but at the end of the day, we talked about the backlash or the blacklash. They are cheating because they are losing.
That's right.
And they are desperate.
Yeah.
And it's over for them.
Spades game tonight.
Spades game.
Tonight.
Yeah, you down for it? All right, I'm good at a good spade. Are you a good partner? All right, we good.
I got you, Cliff.
I got you, Cliff. You down for some spades?
Let's do it.
Yeah, but y'all won't be friends with me after.
How many of y'all play spades? Oh, come on.
Oh.
What's the other game?
Nobody playing no bid whiz.
Anybody playing no bid whiz in Selma? We playing spades.
Play Chicago.
This is not Chicago. That's right. That's right. So, Madam President, you have the last question and answer. What is LDF's commitment to Selma and the rest of the country when it comes to democracy and voting rights?
Well, our commitment to Selma, is this on? Okay. It's unwavering. We've been with Selma from the very beginning, and we will be here until the end. There's no question about that. And I saw Pastor Strong come in. I don't know where he is, but that partnership that we have had with Pastor Strong, with Senator Fire Rose and Hank Sanders and so many other people is something that is just rooted in who we are as an institution. We take our relationships with communities, with partners, with the black people that we were built to serve so seriously.
Yeah.
It matters to us. So we will be here in Selma. We will be beyond Selma. We are building power for a purpose.
Yes.
Because we've talked a lot about power here.
Yes.
And I just want to say, I would not be doing this work, I don't think any of my colleagues would be doing this work, if we were just going to replace the current power structure with black faces. If we were just going to perpetuate the same systems that, as you said, have excluded us.
That's right.
So we should not just think about how we position our power and take on what, like you said, these opportunities to have more agency. But we have to have a plan and a purpose for that power. It's not power for power's sake.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's power for liberation.
That's right.
It's power for transformation.
Yeah.
It's power to create, as we always say at LDF, a world, a multiracial democracy where dignity is sacred, where power is shared, and thriving is the standard.
Yeah.
That's what we're fighting for. That's what power is for.
That's right.
And so I want us to know that as we go off and we do this work and we take all the wisdom that was shared here tonight and take that inspiration and turn it into power.
And Madam President, thank you. And before I turn it back over to Jared, I want to close it with this really fast. As we remember our elder now ancestor, John R. Lewis, I want to leave you with a story that he told me for my book, At Mama's Knee. I've written 4, I forgot the title. But At Mama's Knee. And he said the reason why he joined in civil rights, not just because that he wanted to go to Troy State and King called him the boy from Troy, but it was because of his mother's faith. His mother's faith guided him. And he said, ironically, that his mother did not want him to be involved in civil rights.
Yep.
And he said she would always iron and say, I've never seen the righteous forsaken or her seed begging bread. And he said, my mother's faith got her through everything. In a time of racism, and they owned 100 acres of land, and they were sharecroppers. And he said, if that faith got her through, her faith will get him through in the civil rights movement. And he said she was against it. But ultimately, they kept moving, and they got the Civil Rights Act, and then ultimately, once they got the Voting Rights Act, she wound up starting to sign people up to vote, worked with him. So that's encouragement about the power of the vote and the power of the process. Because sometimes people don't think, you're rocking the boat, but once they see the success, they want to jump on board. Guys, we are successful. Never let people tell you the narrative that we're not. That's why they're taking it away from us. We are more powerful than you can ever imagine. With that, thank you. This has been an amazing panel.
Thank you.
There you go, Jared.
Thank you.
Girl, you had me in tears. I turned to her. I was getting ready to cry.
We have a few closing announcements, please. Everybody can please sit back down. Can you please sit? We have a few closing announcements. Thank you. Everybody, please sit. Please sit.
We're going to play spades with the senator.
Yeah. Just a few closing remarks, if I can please have everyone's attention. One of our national leaders has joined us during today's event, and because of her, the state of Michigan is now a model for the expansion of voting rights. Please welcome the Secretary of State of Michigan, Jocelyn Benson.
Oh, okay. She was up there, the champion of Michigan.
Yes.
Thank you. Wonderful, wonderful. There are several people to thank, but we must start with Pastor Leota Strong, the leader and pastor of Brown Chapel AME. He secured this space for us. Thank you, Pastor Strong. I know I get on your nerves with all my calls and emails and texts, Pastor, but it's an honor to work with you every year. Thank you. Thank you again to our all-star panel, our moderator, Senator Butler. Thank you. Please join us for a reception in the hallway, and we will see everyone on the bridge tomorrow. Thank you.
Who got the cards?
I'm going to get pictures, please.